We all know Elden Ring, and most of us love it. So much so that 30% of all players who touch the game beat it, taking about 50 hours on average. But no game is without its downsides. There are a lot of people talking about one thing in the game in particular that I, for the most part, don't have any problems with though. Reskinning and reusing bosses. Now, that's not to say that's without its downsides, and we'll get into that later, but this is one of the main arguments I see on YouTube videos for reasons why people quit and reasons why people think Elden Ring is a bad game. And honestly, I just don't believe in any of that. Starting off my rant though, let's define what reskins and reusing bosses are. Reusing bosses is when the same boss is used twice in one playthrough. Reskinning bosses is when a boss is used twice, just with a new coat of paint in the same playthrough. And right off the bat, Morgott and Margit are the ones people have problems with a decent amount. And I think, honestly, that Morgott and Margit are the perfect example of what you shouldn't think is a bad boss. Margit is the clone of Morgott. Morgott uses him as sort of like a projection of himself that he uses to take around and do things that he doesn't want his real body to do. And he's meant to be an antagonistic figure in the early to mid game, and Morgott has a completely revamped moveset, 2 new weapons, and a completely new second phase. So I just don't think there should be any problems with Morgott and Margit. But now for field bosses. So, the reused field bosses that I see a lot of people talking about are the Tree Sentinels, Black Knight Assassins, Crucible Knights, and things like that. The distinction, I believe, within these groups is that they are just that, groups. Crucible Knight isn't a Crucible Knight, it's Crucible Knights. Black Knight Assassin isn't a Black Knight Assassin, it's a Black Knight Assassin, and so on and so forth. Since there are more than one of this particular thing in the world, it makes sense that you would find and fight more than one. For specifics of a couple of the selected groups, let's look at the Black Knight Assassins first. They were an elite group of women assassins. So yes, once the group scattered about, you were bound to fight more than one in your playthrough. So in the lore, it makes sense. But now let's look at Tree Sentinels, the creatures that, to my knowledge, people have the most problems with as far as being reused in the entire game. Tree Sentinels, in lore, are a group of high-ranking soldiers meant to protect Erd trees. I have no problem with them, as again, they are a group of high-ranking soldiers, not just one high-ranking soldier. And most of them have completely different movesets. Some of them use lightning, some of them don't, some of them reflect your spells, some of them don't. Some of them have different shields, different weapons, and all of them drop different items. That being said, there is a boss that I have a problem with as far as being reused goes. Estelle. Estelle I have a problem with because it doesn't really make sense for him to be there twice. Now, I know a lot of people say that Estelle is a species, but in my eyes, Malformed Star is the species, not Estelle. So, since it honestly doesn't impact lore for him to be there twice, and it doesn't really make sense for a Remembrance guy to be reused twice, he shouldn't. Now, the key distinction I have between him being reused and things like Tree Sentinels being reused is that Tree Sentinels aren't main story bosses. Now, one of them is required to beat the game, but he's not a main story boss. He doesn't drop a Remembrance, and there's no lore to him besides the Tree Sentinels in general. So, since he isn't a core character of the game, I'm not going to have a problem with him. Now, let's go over reskin bosses I have a problem with. Now, Godfrey is the one that I'll tackle for this. The real thing with Godfrey though, is that he's after regular Godric. You don't fight him before him, and he has half the moveset that regular Godric has. He doesn't have any dragon in his entire moveset. He doesn't talk at all in the game, and there's little lore to him. Most of it's speculation that he's Godric's father. And he seems so shoed in to add an extra boss, and since the lore is a little bit contrived and lazy, I'll give this one to the other side of my debate. Now let's talk about a reskin boss done right, Godfrey. The thing with Gold Godfrey is that he is a glimpse of what you'll see later. in my opinion, he's good as it feels more rewarding to fight the actual Godfrey and already know a little bit about him and his entire first phase moveset. Now, the key difference between Godfrey and Morgott is going to be proper critical thought and the devs making a smart move. Godfrey is just some random guy that pops out, and if he didn't exist, we wouldn't be missing out on anything huge. Morgott, though, is different. The devs were smart in creating him, saving time, and honestly, I wouldn't have preferred it any other way. His character makes sense in the lore, he's honestly pretty cool, and he has an entirely different moveset. So, that is going to be the end of this 6-minute rant. Sorry my voice sounds a little bad, I have the flu, but I will be making more of these videos in the future. Let me know what you thought, let me know if you have any rebuttals to my arguments, and that is going to be the end. See you guys.